Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We have a lot to cover today, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll introduce myself. My name is Dan Yurkovic, and I am the Human Resources Generalist supporting the Community Impact Unit of the Department of Neighborhood and Community Services here in Fairfax County. And I'll go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves if they are on the call.
Sarah, do you want to go?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah Allen, NCS Deputy Director.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ramona Carroll. I'm the Program Manager for the Community Impact Unit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Edwards. I am the former nonprofit coordinator.
Great. Thank you, panelists. So we are here today to share a realistic job preview of two distinct positions within the Community Impact Unit, the Nonprofit Coordinator and the Interfaith Coordinator positions. Both of these positions are currently vacant and are scheduled to be advertised starting this upcoming Saturday, August 7th. The primary purpose of this session is to give a more realistic look at these two positions, what it's like to work in these positions, what it's like to work in this unit, some of the unique challenges and opportunities present so that you can decide if either of these positions is something you might be interested in pursuing further. Before we jump in, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. We're recording the session, so if you missed something and want to go back and watch it, you can do that. If you have a question, we're planning to have about 30 minutes or so after the presentations to answer any questions. You can ask it at that time, or you can post it in the chat, and what we'll do is read the question aloud and answer it. And then lastly, we plan to email out the materials after the session, including the answers to any questions we don't get to during the session. If you did not enroll in the session via Employee U, that's completely fine. But I most likely don't have your email address. So if you wish to receive the materials as well, you can go ahead and post your email in the chat, and I'll add you to the distribution list. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand it off to Ramona.
All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to the realistic job preview for the Interfaith Coordinator and the Nonprofit Coordinator. I'd like to first start off by sharing a little bit about Neighborhood and Community Services for those who may not know much about our agency. The mission of Neighborhood and Community Services is we partner with communities, families, and individuals to provide opportunities to access a continuum of resources that promote equity and create positive outcomes for people of all ages and abilities. The vision of this agency is connected communities where individuals and families are supported and empowered to thrive, provide access for individuals and families of all ages and abilities to the broad spectrum of community and county-based resources and services, sponsor and support community-county partnerships and initiatives designed to enhance coordination and integration of service delivery and increase our combined capacity for meeting community needs. Promote the well-being of individuals of all ages and abilities by providing a variety of leisure, recreation, informational, and developmental and technology programs. Here is a org chart of our agency. We report directly to Chris Leonard, who's the Deputy County Executive for Human Services. Our agency director is Lloyd Tucker. Sarah Allen, who was on the call, is our Deputy Director, and that is directly who I report to as the Program Manager for the Community Impact Unit. Within our within our unit, our structure is the CIU Program Manager. We have a Human Services Resource Guide Manager. We have a Human Services Resource Guide Analyst. We have a CIU Data Analytics and Support position. And then we have the two vacant positions of the Nonprofit Coordinator and the Interfaith Coordinator. It's important to know that this unit is fairly new. It was formed about 4 years ago and took existing departments to coordinate our work and mission to develop, strengthen, and engage and nurture nonprofits and faith communities to build a stronger community. And for those of you who do not know what the Human Services Resource Guide is, that is an online data tool, an online database of nonprofits and community resources. So let's get to the work. So one of the two positions that we're looking at today to discuss is the Management Analyst 3, which is the Interfaith Coordinator. So I'm sorry, I lost my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, so when you look at the duties of the work, 30% is around communication. So working strategically to increase communication, coordination, and collaboration between Fairfax County departments, individual faith community coalitions, and faith-based organizations. Supports county departments, communications, and coordination with the faith community. The second duty is coordination and partnership development and support. Establishes and maintains effective working relationships with faith communities and faith-based organizations and other partners. Facilitates faith community coordination and partnership to leverage resources and achieve outcomes. Third would be community capacity building. Implements framework to assist faith, community, and faith-based organizations countywide impact and work with county departments and other organizations to strategically increase the ability of faith communities to achieve targeted results. And duty 4 is data management. Collects, maintains, and manages a database used for planning, analysis, and reporting of faith communities and faith-based organization identification, categorical, demographic, contact, and service data. So what does that mean? So I was the last person to hold this position, and I had it for the past 3 years. And prior to that, Sandy Chisholm had it for about 16 years. So Fairfax County has been very intentional around having an interfaith coordinator. There are over 500 houses of worship in Fairfax County. And over the past 20 plus years, the FCIA, which is Faith Communities in Action, which is the network of the faith communities, have been very active in affordable housing, domestic violence, emergency planning, mental health, equity, child abuse, elder abuse, connecting with Department of Family Services across the spectrum, and making sure, and even now land development services and other partners, to make sure that our faith communities are connected to each other, connected to the county, and we are tethering and connecting those dots to our strategic plan, as well as to the equity plan. So part of the work includes the management of faith communities in action, FCIA. So that means talking about bringing speakers, topics, points of interest, advancing the county's special initiatives to make sure that we're involving the faith community and that the faith voice is at the table. We're also, I'm also been responsible for making sure that the faith community has representation on board authorities and committees, board authorities and committees, as well as other countywide work groups. Really making sure that the faith voice is heard across the county, and at the same time hearing from the faith voice what they're seeing out in the community. So we know oftentimes that people go out to our faith community, that they are our trusted partners, and making sure that we have those relationships with our faith partners so that they have accurate information and that they are able to provide that information to their congregants or those that they serve, but then also that they have a trusted relationship with us and they have accurate and appropriate information. So within Faith Communities in Action, with the larger FCIA, there is a section of the Clergy and Leadership Council, and that is a group of faith leaders, regardless of your denomination, who come together to talk about different issues and topics. So while the Faith Communities in Action, the FCIA meetings are more of network meetings, these Clergy and Leadership Council meetings are more of strategy and planning, and maybe meeting with the county executive, Chris Leonard and others around county initiatives and really figuring out how to mobilize the faith community. We also have the Fairfax County Community Chaplain Corps. And what that is volunteer chaplains who are ordained in their faith, who go out and respond to mostly sudden death and suicides and also large disasters. And that's a partnership that we have with OEM, with the Office of Emergency Management, excuse me. And then we started about 2.5 years ago, the Common Ground newsletter. So if any of you all are familiar with FCIA, you received the Common Ground newsletter. And this is our concise and intentional way to get information out to the faith community. So we have information about the county, the community, and then we also have the Common Ground bulletin board where the faith community is able to share some interfaith activities so all faith communities can be together and participate in activities. And then we also have now our Houses of Worship app, which gives us an opportunity to see where our faith communities are located, to think about partnerships and also leveraging resources as was discussed earlier. The second position is the nonprofit coordinator. And these duties include community capacity building, so implements a framework to assist nonprofit countywide impact and works with county agencies and other organizations to strategically increase the ability of nonprofits to achieve targeted results. Partnership development and support establishes and maintains effective relationships with nonprofits and other partners, facilitates collaboration to leverage resources and achieve outcomes. Duty 3, data management, plans for the collection, analysis, and reporting of community-level demographic data, compiles, organizes, analyzes, and summarizes data received from a variety of sources. And duty 4 is data reporting, collects, compiles, extracts, and organizes complex information and data from multiple systems into a variety of summary and detailed reports, presentations, and other print and electronic communications using narratives, tables, graphs, and maps that make complex topics and data understandable to a range of audiences. And now we'll turn it over to Renee to explain that role.
All right, so I just want to talk about some of the projects that this position will work on. The Consolidated Community Funding Pool, or the CCFP, is a funding opportunity that provides roughly $13 million to nonprofits for health and human services needs through a request for proposal process that occurs every 2 years. There is a community outreach piece to this that helps determine the funding categories that will help support important services such as basic needs, self-sufficiency, health programs, financial stability, and positive behaviors. The nonprofit coordinator works with staff to ensure the funding process runs smoothly. This position will also coordinate the efforts of the CCFP interagency team that is comprised of staff from the health, human, and housing sectors to ensure the CCFP process is aligned with county goals, plans, and initiatives. The nonprofits network is new, and its purpose is to increase the ability of nonprofits to achieve results as they support the needs of Fairfax County residents. So the nonprofit coordinator will create a nonprofit steering committee and will help facilitate network meetings that will support nonprofits as they identify and operationalize strategies, resources, partnerships, and processes to create stronger organizations. This position will also offer assistance in the areas of building and maintaining a board of directors, identifying programmatic needs, and building community partners together. The nonprofit space planning is also something a nonprofit coordinator assists with. In some cases, Fairfax County government provides county-owned or leased space to nonprofits. This position will help with policies and resolving of any issues that may occur. You are not working alone. I have to say that this position works very closely with neighborhood and community services, community developers, and regional managers. So this person will have lots of support.
Thank you, Renee. And I will turn it over now to Sarah to talk about the broader NCS system and how CIU connects.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the very densely, the dense slide here with all of the words. You will get this, a copy of this, so please don't worry if you can't see it as clearly. But we wanted to highlight how the community interfaith, the community nonprofit coordinator, as well as the interfaith coordinator, work together both with our NCS colleagues, the Health and Human Services system, as well as other county agencies. So we know that for those of you that are in organizations, county organizations, you all work with faith communities, and you all probably work with some nonprofits and some aspect. The difference, however, is in the role that we've been describing today, that we have a lens that is looking across the entire system of nonprofits or houses of worship. And so what that looks like typically is that we will often be sought after, or these positions are sought after, to both look at who the organizations are, who the groups are, houses of worship or nonprofits, but also how are they doing and what do they need in terms of capacity building and partnership. So it is broader than just working with one organization at the micro level. It's really looking at the macro level about how, because our houses of worship or faith community and nonprofits are an integral part in us being successful as a county, particularly in human services, that we're often asked about the who, the how, the why, all of those things to be able to make it successful. But because of that role, we are often working with many of you, our colleagues in NCS, Human Services, and in the county, because your relationships are also with those groups. And so collectively, using the collective impact principles, we work to make sure that all of us are looking at it through our own lens. And so I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I'm going to highlight a couple. So, of course, we also help to lead, partner, and support efforts and collaboration. So our job is to link nonprofits and houses of worship to what everyone is doing already and how we could potentially partner with them on support. And so for NCS, of course, that could look like currently we're working on making sure nonprofits know about rental assistance and, they're doing rental assistance, but houses of worship know about how community members can access those things. So that both has a component outside of the agency and inside of the agency, and we work very closely with people that way. We also facilitate community and civic engagement. So all of this is not just about telling the community, of course, what it is that what's happening or what's going on, but definitely our principles in this agency as well as in this work is community and civic engagement to work together on solving community challenges and maximizing assets. So that's an NCS work, but it's also the positions that you're interested in. It's their work as well, and functioning from that perspective of strength and from collaboration. And then, of course, it was already been mentioned that we work with our regional colleagues that look at both programming as well as community development and efforts to engage the community. And so we maximize and support community organizations by, again, assessing their strengths and their assets. And then, but the two areas that I want to highlight is, I already noted the providing access to programs and services. Our community providers, as well as our houses of worship, are the front door in so many regards to people getting access to services. So individually, that's important to get to know what it is people are needing, but collectively, how can we be more efficient and let all of the houses of worship know different things, or remove barriers for all of the community-based organizations to connect with county and the community residents. But the two highlights are, I wanted to look at, or to share with you, connecting individuals, families, and communities to resources. That's very important, because what can happen is a house of worship, for example, may see a service need. They're interested in providing it, but they will often bring that situation to the interfaith coordinator, and that interfaith coordinator will then work with individually who would be a connection in the county, organizationally in the whole county, who else needs to know and what else needs to happen. And that could happen both at a planning and zoning level. It could happen at a strategic plan level. This might be a service that someone's able to provide that no one else has provided before, so it's meeting one of our strategic planning objectives. So the point being is that this position is looking at multiple levels of county connectivity to be able to support the house of worship, in this case, in the service that they want to provide. So it really is they're wonderful and interesting jobs, because they work micro and macro, but they also are able to see advancement in process of community needs being met. And then what's also very important is it really expands our views. For those of us that might have started in working with individual residents or families, it expands our views to look at countywide coordination. So what does it mean for all of us to think about the ability for people to access things, but also for us to effectively work together to be able to meet those needs. So it has to have a county-wide perspective, not just in service delivery, but in how we actually support all county residents while keeping in mind individual neighborhood characteristics, et cetera. So that's it in a nutshell. You will get that, but I just want to underscore that this position doesn't just look external outside of the agency. It also looks quite a bit internal because our partners and our mission in NCS is to do this kind of work, albeit more broadly focused in some of the areas of the agency. And I'll turn it back over to Ramona.
Thank you, Sarah. And so now we get to the good part. Talking about expectations, telework, and all those other good things, the things that you really want to know. Okay. Hopefully that you could tell, I'm having a little challenge here. But hopefully you can tell from what's been shared already. This is the high expectations in these positions, high accountability, high visibility, high autonomy, and high fun. But I want to be very clear, this is work. This is good work. It is rewarding work, but this is work. You have to care about the residents that we serve. If I go back to what our vision is for our agency, connected communities where all individuals and families are supported and empowered to thrive, which means you have to be dedicated to the work. This is not an 8 to 4:30 position. This is not a Monday through Friday position. You have to be very flexible and adaptable. Sarah mentioned that, this is inside and outside the agency. So there are a lot of partners, sometimes various shades of gray that are moving constantly. And while there's a lot of autonomy with the work, there's a lot of vested interest from not only our senior level leadership within our agency, but also at the deputy county executives level, and also from outside the community. So there are many people who could have input into your work and can voice maybe direction of how the work is going. So that's just something to think about. For these two positions, for me, as the manager, I see these as thought partners. I see everyone on my team as a thought partner. We are a small group, as you all saw earlier. But especially with these two positions, they will have relationships in the community, and they will have the insight and relationships in the community that can help inform what we're doing internally. And it's important to be able to have those conversations to say, okay, well, we are looking at maybe starting this initiative, or Sarah just gave the example about a house of worship that wants to start a program or sees a need, and being able to give that information back, and also not to have us start a program or an initiative or to try to advance something if it's not the right time. So being able to think through and talk through those things in a very open and honest manner. So I mentioned that this is not 8 to 4:30. It's not Monday to Friday. There are nights and weekends, especially if you're doing work with the faith community. There are a lot of community meetings, and even with our nonprofits, there are night meetings. There could be community group meetings, nonprofit meetings that meet at night. And also, we try to meet people where they are. So we want to make sure that we are going to the community and not always having the community come to us. As far as telework, so right now we are following the guidance of the health department and our county executive, and we will be returning to work in September, following the guidance that has been provided thus far, which is the 60-40 rule. So we will be expected to return to work 2 days a week. 2 days a week. So we'll be coming into the office 2 days a week. I also just want to make sure everyone is aware that right now we are also in a shared cubicle space. So we are in a pilot project where we are sharing space. So you will not have your own individual cube. If this is the job that you're considering, you will be able to share it with a partner. You will not be there on the same days, but this is our way to reduce our footprint and to maximize our resources. So just want to make sure that you're clear about that. So let's talk about equity. Hopefully many of you all have heard about One Fairfax and have thought about maybe what that looks like if you are a county employee, what that looks like as far as our role as county employees, but also there is a role of how we advance this work of equity in the community. There is a role for the faith community in advancing equity. There's a role for our nonprofit partners in advancing equity, and that work is very critical to the work that we do in CIU. We look at how services are provided. I think Renee mentioned about board development. What does that look like? And it can be something as simple as the times of meetings. Who's at the table? Which one of our nonprofits are we not hearing from? Which faith communities are not at our meetings and not having access to this rich information that we have to share? And we're also building the capacity of the faith and the nonprofit community to address racial and social inequity so that they're being more reflective about their practices and about the programs that they offer. And they're looking at ways to connect with other resources and leverage assets. So I just want to make that clear that equity is a part of the role, it's a part of our unit, and we use the equity lens to guide our practices when we're thinking about the data that we collect and when we're thinking about how do we mobilize and be strategic, we're using an equity lens in all that we do. So that is all that we have for right now. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so that we can talk.
So if you have a question you'd like to ask, please feel free to, yes, you can raise your hand. I'll try to call on people. You can also post in the chat and I'll read the question out loud. So I see that Robert has his hand raised. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Dan. In relation to the nonprofit coordinator position, how responsible is the person in that position for the success of the nonprofits they work with? And I have a follow-up question to that, if I may.
Could you give a little bit more to that, Robert? What do you mean by the success of the nonprofit? What do you mean?
Well, one, that could be on a number of levels. One, let's say they're having financial issues. They're running out of the funds they need to do what they need to do. Or two, you see in the community they work with that they're just not impacting the community.
Okay. So, Sarah, do you want to take that?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
A couple different ways, Robert. So if we are, this is an interesting relationship in terms of the consolidated community funding pool. So as many of you know, and those of you that are on the call, the consolidated community funding pool grants are awarded to the nonprofits, but we partner with DPMM, our Department of Procurement and Material Management, on the on ensuring that the organizations are meeting their outcome measures. And so we will be brought in often, if needed, to talk about capacity building that would be kind of in our wheelhouse. And capacity building that's in NCS's wheelhouse are things like the actual program and service delivery, assuming that it's something that we do. And also things like engagement, right? So engagement in terms of the community, if an organization is having a real hard time with outreach for program participants and aren't meeting the numbers that they have, we will often share information with them about strategies to do that. If they're experiencing financial issues and concerns and so forth, DPMM and would be noting that and often give guidance around what they could do to be able to support themselves. That's individually. As a collective, though, if we're hearing, and there have been trends of nonprofits that are needing support in different ways, it would be this job's responsibility to say, let's think about an institute, for example, of trainings that could help nonprofits to become more stronger in these different areas, or have more capacity. So individually, that's usually traditionally done at the DPMM level if there are contractors, but collectively, this position would look at what do the organizations need to be healthy in this community, for the things that we can manage. I mean, we can't mandate everything, and there are plenty of organizations that don't have contracts with the county, and we still have a vested interest in making sure that they're healthy. And then the last thing I would say that is that if an organization or a group of organizations are not as strong as they could be, it's more like the county has a vested interest, and we bring multiple partners together to wrap around those groups to be able to support them the best we could. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, very, very much so. And if I may sneak a follow-up question in, I'm a little more used to working with members of the community, actual people receiving services from nonprofits. So the person in this position, if a nonprofit, again, going back to if they're financially struggling or they're not meeting the needs of the community, would the person in this position be looking more at bringing support to the people that need that service or to supporting the nonprofit?
Great question. And the way that often comes, well, let me answer it first. It would be more towards the organization, but we would activate our colleagues that would be able to support the residents in what service they might need. Additionally, if a nonprofit was to perhaps not get funded or was unfortunately needing to close down, we would work with our partners to make sure that those residents who are getting that service were linked to other services. And sometimes that would mean us identifying what those other services are and perhaps creating different funding opportunities for those nonprofits. So this position would be looking at all those multiple aspects, but wouldn't have to do the direct client connections, obviously, but would get our colleagues who do that kind of work, CSP, regional services, et cetera, or DFS, or whichever group would do that, to then work with the community directly.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
So before we go to the next person with their hand raised, I'll ask a question from the chat. The Northern Virginia Regional Commission used to host a meeting of nonprofit organizations. Do they still do this?
This is Sarah. You want me to take it, Ramona?
Sure.
Okay. I don't believe that they do that anymore. And actually, as many of you know, our colleagues in regional services host regional meetings or have hosted regional meetings of nonprofits together. But during COVID, everything has changed. And so I anticipate this position working with a group that we are calling the Community Provider Strategy Team, which is getting together right now and supporting nonprofits, as well as the regional colleagues that are going to, I'm sure, be initiating regional approaches to this work of nonprofits getting together. And then I bet there are regional things that are going to kick back in after COVID, and one of those might be the Regional Commission.
Okay, and we'll go to the next person with their hand raised. I think that was Diane. Diane, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for this. Concerning the Interfaith Coordinator.
Diane, it's a little hard to hear you. Can you speak up a little bit, please?
I'm sorry, can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have my headphones on. Concerning the positions, what is the timeline that you're looking for in getting the applications and doing the interviews, as well as what are the qualifications that you're looking to for the employee to have?
So I can talk a little bit about the timeline. We're planning for the position to be posted this upcoming Saturday. It would run for 2 weeks. So the posting would close midnight Friday of August 20th into Saturday. But that would be when the ad closes. And then I would say probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks after that, we typically are going through the applications and reviewing those and then reaching out to candidates who have been referred in the next couple of weeks after that.
So you're probably thinking about mid-September.
Okay, and are you looking for any specific qualifications that the employee has to have?
So I would just add before you do, Dan, we decided not to list all of those in our PowerPoint just because we knew they would be in the job announcement. So generally speaking, it's going to be very detailed in the job announcement, Diane, but a management analyst 3 position in S27 is a professional level category, as you know, that does project management, that assesses and reviews data, et cetera. So those kinds of things are what we're looking for. Is and then I'm going to defer to Ramona with this, but we want someone that is able to be able to take on projects, have them be they're multi-dimensional projects. They can be complicated and have multiple factors. This person needs to have extremely good political acumen. I never say that word right, but acumen or political savvy. And then, but knowledge specifically around nonprofit is very important. Specifically around houses of worship are important, but it's not a done deal. I mean, you also don't have to have worked, with nonprofits or houses of worship. So let me stop there and throw it over to Ramona, because I know you have some feelings about this and what you're thinking.
Oh yeah, no, that's everything you said was correct. And I did see something that was asked. We want someone, the political acumen is absolutely correct. Someone who can manage conflict well. That's not a criteria, but your ability to maintain relationships and what that means, and that there is vested interest. I think I said, you have to care. Like, you have to care about those that we serve. You also have to care about our partnerships and our relationships with the faith community, with our nonprofit partners, with our county partners. But there has to be a real invested interest in wanting to do this work and wanting to have the type of impact that we're talking about and that we strive to do. So I don't know if that's a qualification, but you have to care and you have to really want to do this work. And this has to be something that is of value to you, because I take this work very seriously. So let me just say that I take this work very seriously. I take the work that we do very seriously as an agency and as a unit, and expect that same thing for those that are on my team. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So quick question from the chat. What are the educational requirements for the job? The minimum qualifications for the management analyst 3 job classification, in which both of these positions are classified. You can find that in the class specification, but located on the county's website. But it's any combination of education, experience, or training equivalent to a 4-year college degree, bachelor's degree, in a field related to the assigned functional area. And what we have identified as the functional areas at this point are community-based programming and engagement, health and human services, and/or data analysis. And then in addition to that, 4 years of professional work experience with the functional area. And I guess we can go to the next person with their hand raised. It looks like that's Sarah.
Sorry, everyone. I lost my cursor for a moment there, so I had to get it back. Ramona, nice to see you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how this position, the faith-based interfaith coordinator, is supported in doing interfaith work from a county government perspective. So how is that addressed? How are they supported? And what are the stakes are high there, so what are the systems that you've learned in the last few years that support that?
Thank you for asking that. We are the county. So let me be very clear. We are county government. So the role really is to bring the interfaith community together around county issues. So around, if you think about quality of life issues, housing, domestic violence, mental health. We don't get into interfaith dilemmas or conflicts or anything like that. We don't get into anything like that. We're not a theological group. We don't do Bible studies. We don't do prayer circles. We don't lead advocacy. Because, I think that so I'm really glad you asked that question. We don't do advocacy stuff where people, we're bringing the faith community to march in the streets. We are really bringing the faith community together in their shared mutual kind of understanding of their love for their divine as they identify it and their love for people and wanting to create a better Fairfax County. So this work is really like connecting those dots. And you know, there's over 500 houses of worship, and we have super, super conservative and super, super liberal, and it's bringing them all and the quality of life of those in Fairfax County and figuring out where they fit, because not everybody will be in the same space. So this is not a faith position. This is an interfaith coordinator that is by the county, and we do have some very hard work. You know, it's gray, but there are some clear delineations. So when, you know, again, we're not hosting prayer circles or, you know, that kind of a thing, but we really are bringing the faith community together, not around theology, but really around their love and care for humanity.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from the chat. Is there any discussion or plans for growth of this group in terms of the number of positions?
Who asked that $1 billion question? Sarah, did you want to answer?
So what I can tell you is that the work of neighborhood and community services is always evolving, and we are so lucky to be able to try to fill in the gaps of what county work is and with communities. And so at this point, the small unit is where it is for now. But there, you know, there's always opportunities for expansion. We, as an agency, as many of you may know, Office for Children has joined NCS recently, and we are still looking at how we're organized as an agency. So there could be some changes there. Our work is so connected amongst each other within NCS that it's highly probable that we could reorganize things, and that could mean that it could impact CIU a little bit differently. So more to come. And one thing that Ramona said about us trying to have fun and us being able to be an organization that is supportive and lively of each other is also that we have to be adaptable, and we are. So we're ever changing, but in a good way, not too exhausting, but in a good way. And it could change soon, but I don't have anything right this second that says it's going to.
Okay, and looks like Maria has her hand raised. Go ahead, Maria.
Yes, and part of my question was covered in the previous question. My question was if this position also works with business offices that are more like outreach, community outreach, not non-profit, but you know, business that are outreach into the community. Is there any type of coordination with them? I mean, if there is a common interest or not, or is that more like a job from the business office of Fairfax County?
So I would say that our work cuts across the entire health and human services spectrum. So, but the outreach and engagement piece, we are most closely aligned, I would say, with our community developers, but we've been working with the health department outreach team. We've been working with land development services and some of their outreach and engagement. So we work in different areas, and I hope I'm answering your question. And I think when it comes to the business sector, did you ask about the business sector specifically, or did you mean just engagement?
Engagement.
Okay, so yeah.
But engagement with the business sector offices of community outreach.
Oh, the Office of Community Outreach. Okay, we haven't, CIU hasn't done a lot of work with that office, but I know that our agency has been partnering with them a little bit. Our community developers may have more of a connection there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and another question from the chat. Would either of these positions work with FEMA grants or natural disasters in the pandemic?
So our chaplains, so we have been awarded the UASI grant, the Urban Area Securities Initiatives grant, and that grant has helped us to pay for training for our Fairfax County community chaplains. So that's been the extent of our work with FEMA at this time, is through our chaplain corps.
I can also add, Ramona, that during emergencies,
Yes.
nonprofit coordination is pretty key, especially for basic needs. And so if many of you remember the very large fire that took place in Centerville a couple years back, ensuring that there was coordination around how the nonprofits work together to support the needs both at the literal site as well as outside of it, after the disaster when people had been moved into hotels, et cetera. The nonprofit coordinator was part of that, and I don't believe at that time FEMA was reimbursed. Definitely FEMA is connected to COVID, and so we've been involved with them around those kinds of things. So at a local level, there's definitely coordination, faith and nonprofits, and then at the federal level, when we get FEMA grants, or when we get FEMA reimbursement, we will often play a role in that, but OEM is lead, but they often seek us out to be supportive.
And what type of metrics are you collecting at this point?
So in our unit, we really started collecting metrics and looking at our data right before COVID to really come up with a ground game of how we're going to really look at specifically the interfaith work and how that was having an impact and who's at the table and what are we doing and the impact. And then we have COVID. So I'm going to be very honest, this past year and a half has not been a traditional year for either position. We were able to just have, if anybody has attended, we've had COVID briefings. That's what we've been doing basically the whole year. But what we would ideally want to look at is the type of impact that our work is having. So we have a house of worship who participates in youth mental health first aid. What is the next thing that they go to, and how is that impacting their work and their ability to meet their congregation's needs? If we're able to connect our houses of worship and our nonprofits together, what are some of the relationships there? What issue maybe have they addressed collectively? Are we able to leverage and strengthen those partnerships? With our nonprofit capacity work, looking at, again, the impact that's having of bringing the nonprofits together. And again, that is in the beginning phases. I believe that Renee shared that the nonprofit network is new. So coming in at this time gives you an opportunity to also have some influence and input into some of the metrics and to grow that out with us as well. Thank you for the question. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just that we, as an agency, we are always trying to improve our metrics around our work. And so what is the impact of our work? And so we have some metrics around community development and community connections. And like Ramona said, it's usually about them accessing information or increasing their partnerships or allowing, because we worked with them, it allows them to do their job or their mission better. And that is what our results-based accountability metrics were around. But our budget measures, like many of yours, are often outputs. And so we have outputs in terms of engagements, et cetera.
Is a master's or doctorate degree in divinity required for the interfaith coordinator position? I can answer that. No. If you review the class spec for the MA3, it doesn't require that. So we're looking for something within the functional areas that are going to be included in the job ad, but also it's not a requirement for the position. Can you talk about how both of these positions have changed to accommodate the county community during the pandemic? What are some things that will remain once the return to work is in full swing?
So let's see how we have changed during the pandemic. Right, that was the question. How we've changed. Okay. Well, first we're meeting virtually, so that's one thing. But I think, in all honesty, the pandemic has given us all an opportunity to see how we can work differently and how to work more efficiently, I think. So we have the CPST, as Sarah mentioned, and then we have like a smaller food access subcommittee, and that has brought together the nonprofit as well as the faith community together to really look at emergency food in a different way. So that is something that's going to remain after we're back to work full swing. I think something else that may be something that stays is how we meet. We've heard from different partners that virtual is easier for them, especially when you're looking at night meetings. So looking at ways that we can use technology to be more effective and to reach out to community members and to allow them to view a meeting, at their leisure, at home, to have more participation. So I have noticed some of that we have had some more participation, some of our night meetings, and that people are able to be more engaged from the comfort of their home. So that may be something that stays. I think, and this is not necessarily related to the pandemic, I think it's just the timing of the two positions being open at the same time, is that these two positions will be able to start together, which will from the very beginning create a link between the nonprofit coordinator and the interfaith coordinator, when previously we didn't have that. We had two people in those positions who came together and worked well, but to have two people starting at the same time and onboarding them together under this new unit will be different as well. So I think that will also just be a benefit. So that's not related to the pandemic, but that's just related to the timing of having both of these positions open together.
What are your preferred qualifications, or what are you looking for in your ideal candidate? The preferred qualifications, we should say, they're going to be included specifically in the job ad when that is posted. So I would refer to those. Ramona, you may have already talked about what you're looking for in your ideal candidate. Maybe, I don't know if that's something you want to address it more specifically, or.
I'll give it a once again. So care about the community that you're serving, value public service, but also that you have thoughts and ideas and you're willing to share them, that you're somewhat of a risk taker and are interested in trying to do things differently and find new and creative ways for us to engage the faith community and our nonprofit community, that you're able to build relationships and maintain those relationships. That you're not afraid of confrontation, because especially if you're going to be having conversations and building capacity around race and social equity, those conversations are never easy with anyone. So being able to to build your own capacity. Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat, sorry. But to build your own capacity to have those conversations, but then being able and being comfortable to have those conversations with partners and community members, and to be able to hold people accountable, to be able to hold other teammates accountable, colleagues that are in the agency, outside of the agency, to be able to bring a team together and to be able to move initiatives and programs forward. I think that was a little bit more than what I said the first time, so thank you.
Perfect. So just to restate, we're planning for the positions to be posted this Saturday and run for 2 weeks. The current plan is to hold one set of interviews for both positions. And then moving on, is there a nonprofit coordinator working predominantly with CCFP nonprofits, or is there a large amount of work also done with nonprofits who did not receive CCFP contracts?
Did you want to grab that one, Sarah? Okay.
So the idea is it would be both. So there are times when it's more, especially when we first award the funding pool awardees, we want this position to take an extremely active role in ensuring that those that are newly awarded get connected to the system in which we have in Fairfax County, other nonprofits in the county. And so at that time of the year or years, that would be more intensive with CCFP. And throughout the year, this position would work with kind of any and all of them. And again, they would be looking to see if there are groups out there or organizations that could be better linked together so that they could more effectively serve the community. And we also do work with, sometimes there will be 2 programs in one area and then there's not another program for miles. And so sometimes our work is thinking about a better way to do that. And in that occasion that I just gave, the nonprofit coordinator would be maybe facilitating some of those conversations, but we bring in other subject matter expertise and our colleagues in the regions to be able to work through what the best plan is.
Okay. Are some of the organizations a part of VOAD?
Yes. some of the faith communities are a part of VOED.
Please share a leadership aha moment you experienced while functioning in the role of the Interfaith coordinator.
Whew, okay. One of the things I'll say, so I came from the position of a community developer, so used to working with community and had built a kind of network up before I took the position of the Interfaith coordinator. And I will never forget my first meeting as the Interfaith coordinator, 12 people showed up. And what I heard prior to was like there were 40 people that came to this meeting, and people came, and it was crushing, right? And coming into a position where the person before me had the job for 16 years, there was already a culture that I was coming into. And so as a leader, you have to be mindful that you're not coming into something that's a vacuum and you're just developing and snatching it out the air. You're coming into a culture that already exists. So it was going to those faith leaders and having conversations and building those relationships with them, and also sharing with them my vision of the work, but not taking away from the good work that has already been done, even though my vision was vastly different than what was done prior to me being in the position. So I think as a leader, you're thinking about how do you bring people along to the vision? So that's important, and pacing yourself with those who are already part of this culture that you are now being inserted into, and realizing that anytime you're joining a new group or new organization, or you're coming on board, you're coming into something that's already existing, and there are already norms there. And as a good leader, you're thinking about those norms and who are those people, and connecting those dots, not to offend, but then also to move people forward. So I think that was my biggest aha moment when 12 people showed up and we had like food for 50.
Notice that the
Thank you.
description of duties and allocation of time was different for each position. Can you talk about why that is and how that manifests in the day-to-day work?
I think, and Dan, I may ask you just to be correct. I mean, I think that we're looking at breaking out the work, and so nothing is a prescribed science. So I'm not going to say they're estimates, but it's like, this is where you kind of spend most of your work. While both of the positions are MA3s and do similar work, they're different types of work that you're doing. So coalition building may be different from partnership meetings. So there's just some differences and nuances, but it's just to give you an understanding of how the work is split up. Am I right, Dan? I don't want to.
Yeah, you're on the right track. The percentages associated with each of the duties is kind of meant to be a rough estimate of this particular aspect of the job. So small differences here and there maybe, but overwhelmingly there are duties that are performed more frequently or more intensively than others. And then what are some upcoming initiatives or plans that you have for the coming months and year that will involve either or both positions?
I think the thing that, of course, getting people hired and getting people onboarded together is the main one. And then really looking at how do we continue to engage and re-engage our partners in whatever type of format we're in, whether it's virtually, whether we're looking at a hybrid of in-person and virtual. But what does this look like going forward? What does engagement look like going forward in this type of hybrid environment? What are some new trends that we're seeing and some of concerns from our nonprofit partners, from our faith communities, and really being able to kind of dig into those things. So not relying on just what we've known in the past, but looking at, are there other trends that have come up? Are there things that have peaked now because of COVID that we should be paying attention to? And then also I'm going to say equity. I think that I mentioned earlier that we have a significant role in advancing racial or social equity in the community. And so really getting some footing behind that and being able to do that work simultaneously with our nonprofit and our faith community.
Okay, and I think we have time for maybe one more question and then we'll wrap up. What type of training, if any, is provided when starting in the new position?
Oh, we have our NCS new employee orientation, And then a lot of it is kind of on the job, I would say, that you're in it and you're learning we're kind of learning as you go. But that, we do have some procedures and things to review, but it really is on the job training and kind of building at the same time.
Definitely an art, not a science. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of time spent talking through things, and because it's a lot of gray. Some things are tangible, some aren't. So it's a lot of time working with your colleagues and with Ramona. So.
Yeah, that's right, Renee? That's
All right, well, it looks like we're right on schedule. Just a quick reminder before we wrap up, if you didn't enroll through Employee U and you're interested in receiving the materials that we plan on sending out after the session, make sure to drop your email in the chat so we can add you to the distribution list. Once again, the positions we're planning on them going out this Saturday, running for 2 weeks. I think that's pretty much it. Thanks again, everyone, for taking the time to meet with us today and to hear more about these positions. And hope to hear from some of you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.